I'm saying, well, why don't you change some of your practices? You know, I mean, liming helps, but if you bring the problem back, liming only gives half the response. So you got to change some of the practices, and one of it is the acid fight. Nothing wrong with some acid fertilizer. We're not saying, but the overuse of acidified products is quite negative to the soil.
Can organic people use Roundup? They can they? What do you do with the alfalfa? You plow it down?
Plow it down.
You plow it down. Great manure.
The corn field that's over there, it's a 20-acre. That was it was wheat last year, but it had a lot of alfalfa in it from the previous year. And because I was using the wheat as a cover crop last year, and I didn't get it, I couldn't till it in because it was too wet last spring. And so I still had alfalfa there this spring when I tilled it in. We'd go back through that field. I'm sure I could still find a few sprigs of alfalfa that I'm having to work around.
Alfalfa tends to be a pretty nice weed, though.
Yeah, it's not a bad weed. No,
It didn't take much away from it.
no, I don't. The other
First,
one
have
that
a weed.
Yeah.
Dry year, it'll take some moisture.
It'll take the moisture, but it'll also help manage moisture.
Right.
It will take some. Now, we don't want overall competition, but a random alfalfa is a little bit more. But you do have to watch with your disc and whatever. When you're cutting, we want to cut all those roots off. And if we don't think we got them, we want to go into something with the sweep tooth, make sure we got them on top. But the bigger thing would be get the quackgrass. You know, that's why we've been using the Roundup initially, because of the quackgrass. And what do we get the quackgrass? We get the calcium up and get the decay working, and you won't have quackgrass to put Roundup on in the future. And if we did that initially, that would save quite a cycle to our system.
Well, how much soil would have gone down the drain if quackgrass wasn't around? My God. Quackgrass probably did more than NRCS ever did the whole soil in this country.
I appreciate that statement, because quackgrass, some people will say, well, how do you deal with the root mass? Well, just get it to decay. Once you got decay, it just holds the soil together. It actually has some allelopathic effects. Once it's dead, it'll control some problems, but it's quite a mess of mass if you do surface tillage with it. But getting it to decay is the key. But if you got the decay system working properly, that soil doesn't want to. But on a biology basis, you take that average soil that has about a ton per acre, I don't care what you do, it's going to erode even if you do it no-till, and that's measurable. You do a soil that's got 6 to 8 ton per acre of biology, and just the biology turnover gives you more things to hold that soil together than what the quackgrass is. Because it's a life and death factor of the soil. Think about as a farmer, think about protein decaying. What happens when you leave the steak on? You left it out too long. Well, the first thing is having it get sticky on the surface. And that's what happens with protein decay. So you have a factor of protoplasmic decay in the soil. That's the glue that holds the soil together. But if your biology's levels down, you don't get that factor. And you can try to make up for it with no-till and all the conservation things, and you won't keep up. It's a mathematical impossibility. You have to get the biology back, then we can make these practices.
You weren't in on that one. Dr. George Berger was talking about that today. Doing the soil through 8 inches of water, just dropping the soil in and watching it dissipate as it came down to the bottom. And I didn't understand it completely.
There's the different types of soil.
Yeah.
And he could tell
How it
Yeah.
dissipated through that 8 inches of water column. You know, you could just see what was in that soil structure as to biology. The good biology, the soil could just hang right together and go down. If it was in poor biology, the sand sediment would just fall right out down to the bottom, just poof, right down to the bottom. It's just amazing to watch it just drop right out.
At our first meeting, we did something called a slaking test, where you take about a 2-inch chunk of soil that's dry, very dry, put it on a screen and just immerse it in water. And if it doesn't have much organic matter, doesn't have much soil biology, that'll basically just blast apart and fall apart immediately. Whereas if it's got some good organic matter, good life to it, it tends to hang together because of those microbial gums and polysaccharides and all that kind of good stuff. So there's definitely something to that stuff, absolutely.
There's a guy by the name of, in Ohio now, I think he's still alive, but his grandson, I think, is down farming the farm now. It was Rex and Blend Spray. They were Knox County, Ohio. But he was on the Soil Conservation Board. So he was involved in the conservation tillage yield contest. And he corn and soybeans. But it make a difference on yield. And he did really well on yield. With it, and his fertilizer was 0, 0, 0. It's like, but erosion control, the only farm that beat him, he used offset disc and field color. The only farms that beat him on erosion were no-tilling into the alfalfa side. There wasn't anybody that had a rotation that could be not doing no-till. He had less tillage than any of the no-till guys except for a certain few that were no-tilling into the side.
Now that was organic?
That was organic production, that was long-term organic. He'd been organic for 20-something years. At that time, he'd been organic for 35 years now.
Okay, so he no-tilled in alfalfa. Now how does he kill
No,
the
he didn't
alfalfa?
no-till. The guys he was competing against were no-tilling.
Oh,
Meaning the only guys that competed had less erosion than he did. He was doing tillage, and he beat all the no-tillers except for the no-tillers that were no-tilling in the alfalfa side. Anybody that was corn after corn or corn and beans had more erosion, no-till, than what he did tilling because of his biology, and he understood. And he also out-yielded them too. And I have the records.
This is a little bit of a curveball, but we hear a lot from our conventional friends about how these BT corn stalks are a nightmare to work with. I'm presuming since you guys don't have the BT gene in your corn, maybe the
I don't have to deal with that one.
Well,
I've got an exact gene here, so.
well, I'm very curious whether there's any truth to this BT thing, or if it's just that as our yields are going up, we've just got so much residue to deal with that's the bigger problem, or maybe some of these other standability traits have been bred in more conventionally are causing this problem. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yep.
Well, let's hear them, by golly.
How long do you have?
Can you distill it down to 2 minutes?
John Deere likes to sell you more bigger equipment because of that. Yeah, I mean, they're making the bigger equipment to cut those stalks because those stalks are decaying as well. And I'm saying, you said it, they're not decaying. So. Has anybody even focused on decay? So you got to do two things. You got to focus on decay, but if you understand it's a biological process, and if you understand anything about BT, I mean, BT operates under the principle that anything. Initially, we used it for leaf chewing worms, but it's a dead bacterium that'll tie up the gut of the leaf chewing worm. It won't really affect the animal much. Not that it doesn't have its health, but you got to understand how the worm and the organism works, and you get all the way down to this nematode that's microscopic worm. Oh, BT can stop it, but as was discussed today in a program, farmers we've been taught about drip feeding nematodes, but we haven't been taught much about the beneficial ones. If you lose those beneficial ones to the BT, that stops further digesting in your nutrient cycle process. Plus, you've got a stalk that doesn't allow decay. Plus, you've got a system to hold up economics that you probably put more potash on that even made that stalk even more brittle because you're fighting for more yield. And versus having a stalk that's real palatable, real digestible. What happens when you get too much potassium on the alfalfa and you cut it a little bit too late? The digestibility goes down because the fiber's too high. And it's the same thing in the stalk. It's like the key is running that at the optimum so you put enough potassium on to make it function properly, but you still have it digestible because you want the digestibility of the stalk to go back and build the soil. It's not about feeding the cows, it's about feeding the microbes in the soil that are actually the same amount of biological organisms as the cows. You see what I'm saying? You're feeding the same type of animals. But when you interrupt that process with something that kills those little worms that are the good guys, it stops the whole process. And then you've got this integrated into the cell structure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with little BT, but I don't want it on my cornflakes anymore. Because I know in my gut, I've got some of those little beneficial nematodes too. You talk to George Bird. There is more nematodes on the face of the earth than there is any other mammal. I got the right animal. Any other animal. It's like I take it. I know when you look at a microscope, there's a bunch of them. It's like, but we have to manage those. That's part of our farming responsibility is manage those. And when you get down to manage them, they can be managed just like Mike's managing the chickens or managing the sheep. That you manage them, and that's what makes the soil really productive. The Roundup thing is interrupting that process. And it's also interrupting the reproducibility of the process because it interrupts with things like manganese, which are part of the key to reproduction.
So could we be going down the road with some of these trace minerals that get chelated by the Roundup?
Should we be going down the road?
Little zinc, little manganese.
Should we be doing a little more? We should be doing some more further spraying than what we're doing, but you won't be able to keep up.
Well, we could try.
No, you better change your system because you can't keep, you got to get the system so it'll work so you don't have to be out there all the time putting on stuff. That's the way the system was designed. Mother Nature is really productive. You got to build the organic matter back, get the minerals back, get the biology working. System really wants to be productive. And in the meantime, though, we need the foliar spray and put some side dress. I'm not against that. Don't expect it to solve the situation that we're creating with Roundup or stacked genes. Meaning, we've been blessed with a thing of understanding why insects attack plants now. We can understand that. We can understand that the digestive tract of the insect is different than a mammal. They want different things. They want different pHs. So we can change that. Why do we need the stacked gene if we can change it? And have the system work better and have it feed better, have it make better reproductivity, have it be more productive. You can feed less hay and get more production out of it into this system. You can feed less corn and get more production out of it. And you can feed less corn and get better reproductivity in your animals. Why would we want to go away from that? And then that gene is taking, those genes are taking us away from it. And I accept any challenge to that argument in any environment, and I'll win the argument. I guarantee you, because it's already been in that argument.
You know,
I have research.
I guess I'd clarify that.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at, we're in the pig business, and I'm sure a lot of the corn we feed is feed. And, you know, if you look at the productivity reproduction wise, it's just taken off like it never has before.
and see, what I've been reading is that the BT corn, rather than decreasing nutritional quality, is actually increasing the nutritional quality of the corn because there's so much less aflatoxin and vomitoxin because there's not the insect damage there to initiate those moldy funguses. Now, I don't entirely disagree with you either, Joe. I guess I can see both worlds there.
In the thumb,
Because if
I don't know
you-
what you do over here. In the thumb, the only way they do to control the aflatoxin is put on more headline fungicide. And that's like $30 an acre. And in the short term, I'm not going to question that it works. But in the long term, you're decreasing, most of that pesticide goes to soil. You're decreasing beneficial organisms in the soil. When you decrease beneficial organisms in the soil, the mathematical impossibility to not increase non-beneficial organisms. Now, what you're saying about the pigs, I would say that could be right in the short term, but I'll just say, I'll guarantee you, I'll just bet my wallet that says you're supplementing more to try to make that work. But you have to supplement. That your feed guy is putting more of the right minerals in. It's trying to make the system work. If you're doing it without supplementation, I commend you.
I guess what I see is I can see your worldview. You know, I came up through Gary Zimmer and the Midwest Biowac guys and all that, and they were all about, you know, let's get the trace minerals on there, let's balance the cations, let's not overdo the potassium, let's focus on crop quality. I mean, they really shined in the dairy industry because they were all about quality forage and all of that. But even when you're talking about pigs or chickens, you know, increasing the nutrient density of that grain does have a benefit. So I can see that too. I just am not so sure that we can't do those things. We can't do the soil balancing. We can't do the trace minerals. We can't start paying more attention to the soil health while at the same time still getting some of those benefits of no-till agriculture and some of these other things. I guess I don't see them being so mutually exclusive, and I guess that's one of the things that kind of drives me crazy about the organic world is, you know, the first thing some people in the organic world have to do is, you know, tear down and denounce everything about conventional agriculture just so they can point to their system as being so much more favorable. I guess I see there's conventional farmers who do a really poor job. They don't yield well, the crop quality is bad, there's lots of mycotoxins and molds and everything else, you know, and there's conventional guys that do a bang-up job, do an excellent job, pay attention to their fertility, a lot of the things we've talked about here tonight. And frankly, there's organic farms. I mean, God help me, my family ran one for a while. It was just a train wreck. I mean, all they did is they pulled the pesticides out and nothing else changed. You know, and the farm failed and ended up getting sold off for development. And I see organic guys who, you know, they run Elaine Ingram's test, they run the, you know, they pay attention to all this stuff that you guys do, and they do a bang-up job. So I guess I see there's a lot of different, it's not so much organic versus conventional, it's a healthy soil, healthy biology mindset versus frequently just not considering it, you know. In the conventional world, we have an endless box of Band-Aids. You know, you got a fungus problem, spray with headline. You know, the corn's a little light on nitrogen, side dress the dickens out of it. Weeds are coming up, spray it again. You know, and, you know, sometimes you need a Band-Aid. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but, you know, if you get to the end of the year and a third of your budget was Band-Aids for your crop inputs, you know, you got some questions to ask there, absolutely.
We're really blessed with an opportunity where there's a lot of situations we make money right now. In the 70s and 80s, so simple, so that's a lot of guys. That's over with. But right now, I'm not against natural agriculture. I'm just saying, we want to do it with less pesticides. And BT changing the corn is pesticides. It's like that. And it does affect the system. Now, you can make up some things for it. But in the general progression, I don't know pigs as well as they do dairy cows. And I'm just saying, you know, got that dairy cow to produce more, but we got her age down to 42 months and dropping in the process. And we're saying this is some miracle of science. And I'm saying, no, this is just bringing it out of there. And you should go to the stockyards and look at the cow cows. They're not person. It's like that, but it's keeping our dairy system afloat. But it is a really good food system. So we really got to like to tie to the food system and the healthcare system. I always go back to Hillary Clinton. I think the one thing she didn't lie about was that the healthcare system could break the country in the future. We've realized we've had some other economic things happen, but the healthcare system hasn't gone away. And it is a sickness system. There's still a lot of cancer, still a lot of heart disease. There's still a lot of maladies that they're putting new names on because we're getting more disease. The body's getting more acid. We really need to change that around and get on the proper health track. And that can be some of no-till, whatever. But we want farmers to make money. But I'm not, organic is a specialty thing. It's not a niche market. It's way beyond that. It's a certain percentage of the food. It's the biggest part of the growing part of the food system. And there's no way we can turn our head on it. It's growing more than any other part of the food system. It's still, even through 2008, 2009. But there are other parts of the system, some things will be done well on a commodity basis, some things won't. It's like, and there's a lot of opportunities now for more diversity in the system. So, but we got to look at this cost because at a certain point, things will roller coaster again in that commodity market. We've been in that game, and I'm saying I really am not in favor of it. I look at that as if you really research it, I realize it controls, but it was never meant to control. The commodity system is where the surplus is. The local food system is what you should be focused on. Farming should be related to food. You know, farmers become about doing commodities, not it's animals or anything. And there's a lot more money in doing food, and if we shift to doing food and start to pull production out of the commodity system, we have just the opposite happened of what happened in the last 80 years, where the commodity system always had surplus and relatively kept the cheap prices. Well, now when we pull some out, even to do just a little more local food, we don't have to do a high percent, just have to increase that, which is the reason that any farmer can invest in this, whether they're doing it or not. Because when you pull out a commodity system responds in price. So it gets everybody more money. And in the end, that's what I'd like to see there. I'd like to see us be able to expand our communities, do them right, give to the church like we should do. It's like some days that got a little hard in the past. It's like some days people just they go so fast they don't even think about it now because we have to keep up with this system. It's like, so I'm not going to disagree. Your pigs could be working well, but I tell you, I've been in a lot of pig barns where I see the flu go through, and I can totally stop that just by changing how they feed. But I see guys that pallets of antibiotics by the pallet that keeps that system going, and local feed would keep that system changed. versus keeping it going. But a commodity system, we do that, and it's become known. And it's not the best farming system. It might be an agriculture system, it's not the best farming system.
Explain to me one thing, you know, when we are hog farmers ourselves, and when a neighbor gets the flu that's a mile away, there's a good chance that we might get it too.
Yeah.
You know?
When I say you got velvet leaf out there, and it's a noxious weed, if I can get to the farm before he gets it, I can pretty well stop him from getting it. But if he's got it, I can't. It's going to take quite a while to get rid of that, you know. So this flu thing will move, but I'll tell you, if you do it right, it'll go around you. If you do it right, the corn borer thing will go around the farm. We're just saying, well, how could you be an aisle? You can, and you can, but I'm saying when they're in this situation, they use the situation today. Confined chickens, pasture chickens. Yep. Some people are against pasture chickens. We got this swine flu thing going on. Swine, or bird flu. Excuse me. Similar to swine flu. It's organisms. Like cherry leaf spot would be similar to sugar beet spot. You got to understand the base organism. So you get your immune system up. But right now we got these chickens in confinement. You know, we get that bird flu goes through, and how many chickens do we lose in confinement? We lose about 85%. And about 50% of those chickens would have a starter immune system, but now we don't have no cash flow. I think those chickens on pasture, how many of those? About 15%.
Part of the problem though is the number game is a lot different in pasture than in confinement.
I played the numbers game with Herberts, and they're the largest chickens in the state. And I can show you enough chickens on pasture in northern Michigan to match parts of what they do. So it's a matter of whether you got one location with hundreds of thousands, or whether you got hundreds of locations with thousands. Same number. But you spread out your problem, and that's the way agriculture used to be based. But when we started basing on volume production, commodity production, we intended to consolidate. Now, I'm going to say we don't have enough time tonight. We've got to get back to the weeds. But you think that system works? Think about what they told us about the financial system back in 2005, how good that was working. And everybody was telling us the truth. And what happened in 2008? You would think in 2009, you'd look back and say, well, Jesus, somebody wasn't telling the truth. And I'm saying, we really got to slow down and look at our agriculture system, because, you know, our livelihoods, feeding part of the world, feeding us and our communities, already depends on that. And we've already got a health system that's spiraling out of control. And I don't know if you guys get blessed with the cancer thing like I do, but it gets my attention. And I just lost a nephew here a while ago. He was a ring bearer in my wedding to colon cancer, and that shouldn't have happened. It's like, and some of it was his choices, I admit that. But some of it was the way we do food system, you know, what we put in front of them. And that's a cancer that's totally done. We just got to change a little bit of how we eat to do it.
I had to make sure Joe came to this so that next time I come to you guys and ask you to try a practice, you go, well, that's perfectly reasonable. We can do that. You're helping me out a lot.
Well, I know one guy that's an organic farmer, and we farm right next to him. And it's in Burnham's, the Lowell brothers. And it's a shipwreck wreck. I mean, it's, when they combine beans, I'm telling you, weeds are 2 foot higher than the beans, and it is tough. They have to wait for frost to come to combine beans, and then they probably only get 20 bushel an acre then. Now this is soybeans.
Yeah.
You know, and their corn too. It's 40, 50 bushel. That's all it is. It's a good farm.
Come to the thumb.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of
Come to the
chicken
thumb.
there that goes to the thumb.
We've got we're a much different group. This is serious, but I gotta say, I don't care if we're putting a marketing rep in Japan or if we're raising corn. Serious business, and we do it that way. And if we're going to raise soybeans, we out yield most of the guys in the farm. And I'll show you the test plots. If you're going to come, they'll be touring them in about 3 weeks and doing all the counts, and we'll do that. We're serious about this. We're not that some days we can be laid back. It's about making money, farming and everything about it.
We'd like to make a little.
Yeah, we'd like to make a little. And right now, again, I'm glad we're making some money, no matter how we do it. But it's like we we gotta put some of that aside, because we gotta think about how this commodity system works. And investing in the food system, investing in people's health, investing in soil quality is good no matter how we do it. We can always see those examples. I think we gotta look beyond that. You gotta know what the neighbor's doing, you know, the Jake and Jeff, you know, they had sick mules. Jake asked Jeff, you know, you do your meal. I give him 2 quarts of drink. You know, next time we got together, she told me there, you know, my mule died when I did that. Funny thing, so did mine. I mean, you really got to know the whole story. it's like you got to know the whole story about, and you got to look at this farming thing over 50 to 100 years, and you got to look at your soil quality over 10, 15 years. 1 or 2 years doesn't mean much. As far as what the neighbor's doing, you got to know everything of why they're doing that. You can't just look at it and say, well, that doesn't work. You got to know everything of why they're doing that. You don't take anything for granted if you're really looking at comparing.
You know, I think the real take-home message is that when you're gonna, if you're gonna go organic and you're gonna take, you know, this and this and this out of your toolbox, you sure as hell better have a plan for replacing that tool with something you can use. I mean, it's not just a matter of selling the sprayer and, you know, and quitting with that. You got to have a plan, and you got to have the tools, and you got to have the knowledge, and you know, you got to have enough financial flexibility to spend a couple of years working on it. And really, it's the same thing with a transition to no-till or to conservation tillage. If you're going to put away the chisel plow and you're not going to fall chisel anymore, you know, you better have a different way of getting that seed in the ground that doesn't require that. You better have a plan for dealing with compaction. You know, you better, you got to think about it. And you know, and certainly, Harvey, I've seen some god-awful examples of organic farms too.
You didn't want to be
And I've
around here
seen
last year. I had bean field that you did not want to see. It was one of those fields. This year, that's beans. They're pretty.
It's been
yeah.
dry though.
Yes, it's
You know,
totally
there's a
different year.
Totally different.
Totally different year.
Last year we had moisture all the way.
Yeah.
You know, maybe ran out a little bit towards the end, but not much.
Not much. But see, there's things I'm learning too, you know, as I've done this, you know, I've learned, again, this year I've learned a whole lot about how to row cultivate. Totally learned, you know, it's another year into it, and it's like, okay, I got more to go.
The stand of the crop.
It's poor.
You had a poor stand last year.
Yep.
This year it's a lot.
I've got some good areas out there.
And we all know the canopy will prevent weeds. Once you can get that canopy up there.
Mike's tackled these eatable beans and actually tackled some early varieties. That's a double chance. Even get some of those germinating sometimes. You're dealing with different quality stuff. It's graded differently, but if you can get it going, there is a real specialty market. The eatable bean market is really starting to come around. The heirloom market is really also starting to come around. So they're making an investment. It's a choice. You got to know why. You know, I mean, and yeah, I saw the field last year. I was questioning too, but it's like, that's why he's doing it. What he's getting this year, he's hanging in there and getting it figured out. So that's part of what farming out is. So.
Do you get 50% more for your crop?
No.
You know, I don't.
When we sell direct to people, we
Yeah, when we sell direct, we do a lot better.
versus selling pintos on the commodity market, we get
We do-
7 times, 8 times the price.
Small quantities.
Yeah.
Yes, direct to the consumer.
Small quantities. But large quantities, if you had 1,000 bushel of beans, and the conventional guy had 1,000 bushels of beans, at today's price would be $16 to $17 a bushel.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I've seen,
Today's
you
price
know,
organic or conventional?
No, conventional.
Conventional 16, 17.
Yeah, in fact, it was 18.
And
It was
organic
dropped
is
off.
26, 27. It's just that we've done that over a longer period of years.
Right.
We can average it over. We won't spike as much in the short term, but we've been better in the long term. So
organics
we've
have
got to
been
take the price over 10
a
years.
stable price lane. You know, it stays right here, where the commodities market's doing this on you.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't just look at 1 year and say, okay, we're no, it's got to be the.
Not everybody's going to choose to do the retail, but that is one way to do it. But the soybean thing, I know in our area, there was a time we needed another 100 truckloads of beans, and that's when beans were $6, $7 $7 a bushel, and we were getting 20. And we couldn't find the growers to do them because they're pretty locked into doing $6, $7 a bushel. And soybeans and on that type of ground over there are actually the easiest organic crop to do. It's
Pretty
But
tumble
you still
dirt.
have to
isn't it?
rotate to get one out of soybeans.
Yeah, but organic hay is pretty consistent too, especially as we got more dairy. And can anybody raise hay without chemicals yet? Really not.
Alfalfa.
Planting alfalfa to raise that
See,
without
that might be
chemicals?
That's the
a
easy
no-brainer.
part.
That's
Probably
why
easy crop.
organic milk is, well, organic milk is stuff.
How do you explain it?
Well, it's done in a lot of things.
That's not a large scale, but some of it is compromised, but there's still a good, consistent, expanding organic as there's consistent two farms and three sets of buildings, two farms in Ontario that just switched to the whole hog system to make money. And they did it initially buying all the feed because they had bought their feed traditionally in the past. They didn't farm on that, they just rented out all the feed. But now they're farming. And they'll have a good situation right now. Yeah, 70, 80 bushel of wheat, that's probably not cracking on it yet. So, it can be done. Yeah, there's choices. And I agree. I appreciate that we're making a little money on doing conventional soybeans right now. We still got to look at them over 10 years. And there's much different economics here. I appreciate that the Roundup Ready bean, but we have a consumer that's saying that they don't want to buy it. And we have some consumers buying it just because they don't know. They don't know. I guess they're buying it because they don't know. Now, what happens if they do?
Well, before we go round and round on that
Yeah.
one again,
Yeah, we don't want to. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about phosphorus in the
Certainly,
soil? You have
sure.
high phosphorus. You're using, there's a lot of poultry manure goes out and stuff, and you can follow that around. Historically, it really builds up the soil as far as phosphorus to a problem level. What do you see? How do you control that?
You see the same thing happen on poultry farms that you'd have on dairy farms now. Most of the dairy farms are going to liquid manure. You take a poultry, fairly concentrated, it's the initial hot manure, so it's bacterial focused. And what happens, why you get your phosphorus buildup is because your system's too bacterial dominated. It takes a fungal system to keep the phosphate metabolized, so it actually just keeps building up. And the same thing is happening to dairy farms now because all the manure is liquid. There used to be 10 manure, there's a lot of straw. 10 manure with a lot of straw, you wouldn't get a phosphorus buildup on dairy farm because you have no fungal organisms to feed it. But and then we supplement our way out of
What
it.
happens to it then?
What do you mean? It's just build up. It's complex. Certain
It's
crops can
bound.
access it, but corn can't. Alfalfa will access it, just takes time. But alfalfa's got a different root system, and alfalfa's got that bacteria where it can access it. So soybean can access it, legumes can access it, grasses can access it. But the key is slowing the manure down and slowing it, getting that bacterial fungal back balanced. Then you can get your phosphorus down. And in some cases here, what we found is the key is feeding a little phosphate, getting that plant function properly, and then we end up drawing more phosphate out of the system. And so we try to get the conservation department to allow for a little bit of compost, not for a high phosphorus application, but to allow for enough high carbon compost, which may have some phosphate in it, to activate the fungal organisms so we can draw down the phosphate. We see that happening across the system.
But that would be directly related to yield.
Directly related to yield, and a lot of guys, we're trying to make that phosphate up with soluble phosphate. But yield right now is coming over with nitrogen and potassium, most of it.
what about adding a cover crop? Try to pull that phosphorus.
Oats are really good, and like rye is good when you let it get big because it puts a lot of carbon, builds a fungal organism. Cover crops are really good, but some of them are just sucking up the excess nitrogen, and dealing with that. We didn't have a lot of nitrogen in the system, but we tend to lose more.
It's funny you talk about the lack of soil biology interfering with the ability to uptake phosphorus. I had a kind of a client who's in the nursery business. He's got over 300 parts per million phosphorus in his nursery bed, and he's gotten little purple trees everywhere because they can't take up any of the phosphorus. Because the first thing he does before he plants a bed, of course, is he goes in and wipes everything out with a fumigator. You know, and the funny thing was, you know, I told him, well, why don't you get a mycorrhizal inoculation? Dip all your little trees in that before you stick them in the ground. Boy, I'll tell you, the guys at Extension just about chewed off my head for suggesting that, you know, this guy ought to back off on his phosphorus and maybe try to actually get what he's already got in the ground, get up into his trees. So, you know, all this stuff goes round and around, but I really think there is a lot to this notion that if you've got a good active biology, you can actually utilize those materials that are in the soil more effectively, much more effectively. So, I think there's a lot to that.
Next.
Anyhow, should we look at our plants here and talk about that for a minute?